and as light as we can. And it's just a sneak peek into kind of like what we do on a daily basis. And yeah, I hope you guys been enjoying all of the happenings.
And remember to subscribe. Remember, says road to 300k, all the way to 300k.
That's the thing?
It's on.
All the way, I like it.
All the way to 300k. Subscribe, people.
They said I'm only want to hear from one person when it comes to subscribing though, so.
Yeah.
Hey guys, don't forget to subscribe and comment down to our channel.
Thank you, Oz.
Thank you.
From Kingston, Jamaica, this is CVM News at noon for Wednesday, January 8, 2025. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ramon Gordon. We begin with a grisly update. The St. Mary police have identified the pregnant teenager found dead on Sunday, a 16-year-old Jadine Gale, also known as Big Red from Sligo Road, Mountain View, St. Andrew. Her mother confirmed her identity through photographs provided by police officers. A man closely linked to Gale has been taken into custody for questioning. By late Tuesday, investigators were processing the man's Mountain View home. Reports indicate Gale's body showed signs of strangulation and multiple abrasions. She was approximately 6 months pregnant. And 3 fatal police shootings are raising questions about law enforcement accountability and the use of force. The latest incident in Negril, Westmoreland involves a man who was fatally shot after allegedly trying to disarm a policeman. Here are the details. 3 fatal police shootings have renewed scrutiny of law enforcement operations. The latest occurred in Negril, Westmoreland, where a man was killed after allegedly attempting to disarm a police officer at a vehicle checkpoint on Tuesday. Assistant Indicom Commissioner Hamish Campbell says the recent spike in fatal shootings reflects a troubling trend.
We recognise that others have different views and the police have got a very hard task to complete in this country. But at the same time, there is a requirement to comply with the principles and protocols of reasonable use of force and proportionality, and for openness to be made available to us when we conduct our investigations. And that's why we've gone on all last year about the wearing of body-worn cameras.
Campbell says the lack of active body-worn cameras has been a persistent issue, sometimes hindering investigations.
In those cases where body-worn cameras have been worn or reported as having been worn in shooting incidents, we've then discovered that none of them have been turned on. And that is a remarkable feature of the use of body-worn cameras, that in where the person is shot and killed or injured, it's not turned on.
In November, Prime Minister Andrew Holness reaffirmed support for body-worn cameras in the JCF, contrasting the National Security Minister's earlier doubts about their effectiveness in violent confrontations. Last year, Jamaica recorded 189 police killings, the highest in a decade. Nearly half were linked to planned operations.
And that's what we would hope to see a change in. That these shootings, these planned operations need to be conducted in a different manner, in a different way, to secure life, bring these gunmen to court with the guns that are reportedly found with them.
Tuesday's incident in Negril is now part of Indicom's growing caseload.
The other man who was in the car, he in turn was arrested. So he's still a living witness to the events, we hope, or may not be. So the inquiry is very much ongoing at this stage, but that's the basic facts that we have at this time.
Ramon Gordon for CVM News. Opposition Member of Parliament Philip Paulwell is urging the government to address drainage issues in eastern Kingston and Port Royal as infrastructure upgrades continue. He made the call at the commissioning of the Port Royal pipeline replacement, where he also highlighted recent achievements in the constituency.
Finally, Prime Minister, you would have heard my lament every year in Parliament about Harbour Drive, that mosaic project that ran into difficulty, that has caused flooding of people who live on that road which straddles East Kingston and Port Royal and another place that you are familiar with, East Rural St. Andrew. And I really believe that it is time that the commitment that was given by the former Minister of Works be dealt with to regularize that situation, to improve the drainage and to alleviate the danger that exists now whenever there is rainfall. So I really want to commend that to you as we acknowledge today the significant function as we, on behalf of the residents of Port Royal, say thanks for this wonderful project that will ensure that we have high, good quality water and then the sewage to follow.
Paulwell also reiterates the Prime Minister's sentiments to make Kingston, the Kingston Harbour and Port Royal, Jamaica's newest economic hub.
I lamented that there were just a few vessels in the world's 7th largest harbour. This place should be teeming with activity right around the clock, especially after dark when you can do cruising, you can do a whole host of other things. So we presented to the Port Authority areas along the way from downtown to Port Royal where you can have, in addition to the Royal Yacht Club, other facilities where small craft, pleasure craft can be parked, can be repaired, and so on and so forth. And then we have to finish this development in Port Royal, that sunken city that we know if it ever gets on the front page, there will be nothing in the world that could rival it.
And as the spring semester begins, more children are set to benefit from improved classroom experiences thanks to a donation of eyeglasses for visually impaired students. Speaking on Sunrise, Keisha Johnson, director and donor at the National Education Trust, said the agency was compelled to support the initiative.
For us at NET, our mandate is to fill the gaps in the education sector. So, and you guys were talking about that earlier with teacher migration and all of that. So, I mean, students not being able to perform well in school or not performing well in school sometimes is as a result, as they were mentioned, of just not being able to see. They have not been tested. They don't have the proper eye care given to them. And so this is addressing one of the urgent needs for those particular children that are impacted, and especially for the families that are not able to afford the eye care necessary for their children. So to have Visions, 2000 Visions come alongside to make this a reality for those kids, I mean, we couldn't help but say yes. It was a no-brainer.
The initiative is backed by volunteers led by President Devor Bailey, who shared his personal experience with visual impairment as the driving force behind his involvement.
The Volunteers Inc. is a non-profit organization, it's a charity, and we have over 1,000 volunteers across the island. And what we do is we try to identify impactful projects that we can have our volunteers get involved in and that would have a lasting impact on our society on a whole. And so this particular project, stemming from my personal experience and then having the platform of Volunteers Inc. to say, hey, how do we resolve this? How do we get partners on board, such as NET, corporate sponsors, and so on, to address this particular challenge? And so when we look at what we have done so far, so because we would have started our initial screenings in October of last year up until November, late November, early December last year, and what we have found so far, and to the point of impact, is that we would have screened over 246 kids in general, and of that, 60% of those kids would have failed the examination.
Culture expert Professor Donna Hope, speaking on CVM's Lead Story Tuesday, highlighted the growing influence of dancehall music. Her remarks followed the recent release of dancehall legend Vybz Kartel, which has reignited discussions about the genre's reach and relevance.
Well, the genre is alive. The genre is well. Cartel's return has injected a wave, I think, of elevation in the dancehall culture. Because remember, George and listeners and viewers, that dancehall culture usually has one or two leaders, people at the helm that directs the flow of the music, direct the flow of the performances, kind of spur on lyrical battles that generate a lot of new music forms, and that has been absent since Cartel has been incarcerated. People have come up and have been doing their thing, but that figure or two figures usually at the helm of dancehall has been missing. There's a vacuum that has been there, and you remember that subsequent to Cartel being incarcerated, that many of the artists who came up after him kept on calling for world boss, world boss. They saw him as a kind of leader even while he was locked away, and there was that vacuum that he stepped back in and filled, and that has been pulling and pushing a lot of attention to dancehall, and has brought a lot of new energy into dancehall culture. That for the creation of the music, for the pushing of the culture, is a very positive move.
And with that, we take a break. More when we return.
Confident that you are the legal owner of your property? Take action to secure your property ownership. Get a registered certificate of title and become the legal owner of your property. To register your property and obtain a certificate of title, you will need to provide a tax registration number (TRN), a valid government-issued identification, a survey diagram, documentation to prove ownership, up-to-date property tax certificate, the names, addresses, and occupations of 2 neighbors over the age of 50 who are not family members and can give a declaration on your behalf, proof that you have been in open, undisturbed, and undisputed possession of the property for 12 years or more. For further information on registering your property and obtaining a certificate of title, contact the National Land Agency at 876-750-5263 or 876-946-5263. Email asknla@nla.gov.jm or message us at WhatsApp at 876-418-5089. The National Land Agency. One agency, one goal to serve you better.
No more fear of missing out. CVM TV News is on YouTube. Get up-to-date news, sports, and business content at CVM TV News anytime, anywhere. Subscribe now to CVM TV News to see it happen.
Welcome back. Depression is a common struggle for many Jamaicans. Recent studies, however, indicate that a significant number of men are experiencing depression, often in silence. In the past week alone, a man died by suicide in Portmore St. Catherine, and a firefighter climbed atop the Halfway Tree Transport Center in a distressing public incident. Joining us now to discuss the levels of depression among Jamaican men is researcher Dr. Paul Bourne. Welcome, Dr. Bourne.
And thank you very much for having me here.
Sure. Doc, your research focuses on depression among Jamaican men. Can you share the key findings of your studies and what they reveal about the scope of the issue?
Okay, first we want to sort of set some groundwork or some parameters what happened. We interviewed 1,066 Jamaican men across 14 parishes, stratified random sample that is, with a margin of error of 3% to ensure that we can generalize our results. What was used was Hamilton Depression Index that is well established across the space in terms of measuring depression. And we found out that 57% of Jamaican men were depressed, from mild depression to severe depression, with 1 out of every 10 Jamaican men being at a stage of severe depression, which means that those men need to seek medical care, particular psychological care, as quickly as when the study was done in 2022.
57% of Jamaican men and 1 out of 10 needing immediate attention.
Immediate.
What are some of the underlying causes of this depression? Did your research find that?
No, we actually did this research in 2022, between November and December of 2022. And those are the sort of findings that jumped out at us. And I've been trying ever since to actually say to various stakeholders that the men are in need of care because they are hurting in silence. What is going to happen? A number of men are bottling up their depression, suppressing their depression, and that is, whenever that is released, anything can actually happen in our society. What we're also seeing in society as well is an increase in domestic violence, an increase in sexual violence, an increase in alcohol consumption. And all of these are indicators that men are in need of urgent care and urgent help to get them across that line that they are currently in.
Dr. Bowen, what age groups are most vulnerable to these symptoms, you'd say, of depression? And what are the factors that are contributing to this trend?
Okay, the age group actually range from 18 to 99. We actually studied men from 18 to 99 years. And you actually spoke about issue, what are the causes of this. We did not actually look into the cause of depression, but what we wanted to sort of ascertain was the level of depression among Jamaican men post-COVID-19. So this study is now actually highlighting to us that there is an urgent need to assist the Jamaican men. Nothing has been going on so far to assist the Jamaican male. And we need to understand clearly that why there is need for help is because the findings are indicating to us that men are in need of urgent care as it relates to the level of depression that they are facing. Knowing fully well. Go ahead.
What should that sort of intervention look like, you'd say? You're saying that the needs of men are being adequately addressed at present. So, psychological intervention and mental health wellness generally, what sort of intervention are you suggesting?
We are seeking all forms.
We're speaking with researcher Dr. Paul Bourne.
Men are not to cry, men are not to show weaknesses. So what we need to start doing is redefining the space that men are able to now express themselves and deal with this issue relating to depression and how they are feeling. Because what they're doing, they are bottling up all of this inside. And we're going to like to see more cases of violence, including suicide and other vicious acts perpetrated by a male because they are bottling up all of this depression inside of them.
Dr. Bourne, depression is a word we hear all the time, and some persons may associate it with just a very brief period of, low emotions or just an emotional lull. But tell us, what are the concrete symptoms of depression, and what is it even?
There are many indicators of depression. Change in mood. We're not talking about just your change in mood for today. Change in mood, change in habits, change in lifestyle practices, eating disorder. Those are all indicators that something's actually going on with an individual psychologically. And what we need to understand clearly that depression does not mean you're sad now and you're out of it tomorrow. It's a prolonged psychological state that an individual in, and many times he or she is not even aware that they are going through this psychological change and that they sought help. Particularly men within a context in Jamaica that they ought to be macho, they won't seek care for this because many persons see depression as not only a mental health situation, but in the case of some people see it as madness. So because they don't want to expose that they are going through this psychological state, they bottle this inside, and it sometimes expresses itself in terms of other things, including suicide and violence.
Then, Mr. Bowen, how do we go about tackling the stereotypes associated with mental health conversations? You've said it yourself. Whenever we have conversations about mental health in Jamaica, it's very closely linked to ideations of madness, when that is not the case. So how do we encourage people to go out and seek the care 1 in 10 men, you say, they so desperately need?
The matter is complex and profound because you're talking about a cultural issue that underpins what is actually happening to our society. And that's why a number of persons, particularly men, are not going to be seeking care. But what we are saying to men and women and other persons, that men also need care, they also need help. They are equally vulnerable as any other person, the children, the females, and therefore we are saying to the men in society and the men who are listening to my voice, if you need help, go and seek help. And do not worry about somebody else saying that you are psychotic or you are depressed or you are this, and let you feel any less inferior. Mental illness is any other illness, just as your foot or your heart or such, and therefore you will seek care for the heart. I'm also saying seek care for depression.
Dr. Bowen, incredibly important research, very significant findings, but I have to ask you about your motivation behind it. What inspired you to do this investigation?
I want to make a difference in Jamaica, and fundamentally, my studies reaching here in terms of academic qualification was substantially funded by Jamaicans. I got scholarship most of my life. So what I want to do now is to repay Jamaicans for their investment in me. You have invested in me, and it's now my time to assist you and do whatever I can to make your life better.
Nice. Dr. Bourne, thank you so much for chatting with us. Always a pleasure talking with you, my friend. That was researcher Dr. Paul Bourne. Moving on to international news, Meta has scrapped its U.S. fact-checking program and loosened restrictions on discussions about immigration and gender identity. The move comes amid criticism from conservatives as Donald Trump prepares to assume office for a second term. More from Reuters.
It's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram.
Meta Platform CEO Mark Zuckerberg said on Tuesday his company will end its U.S. fact-checking program and replace it with a user-driven system